In the summer of 1968, two boys, 4-year-old Martin Brown and 3-year-old Brian Howe, respectively died within weeks of each other. Brown's death had been initially ruled an accident, but in the case of Howe, the child had clearly been murdered. This triggered authorities to wonder if Brown's death hadn't been a mishap. Even more shocking was that the coroner stated whoever had murdered them was a child themselves. Everything came to a head when authorities zeroed in on then 11-year-old Mary Bell, who had acted suspiciously following each crime, showing immense interest in both cases. Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957 in Corbridge, England, to Betty McCricket, a 16-year-old sex worker who reportedly told doctors, quoting, "Take that thing away from me," when she saw her daughter. Things went downhill from there. McCricket was often away from home on quote-unquote business trips to Glasgow, but her absences were periods of respite for the young Mary, who was subject to mental and physical abuse when her mother was present. McCricket's sister witnessed her trying to give Mary away to a woman who had been unsuccessfully trying to adopt. The sister quickly recovered Mary herself. Mary was also strangely accident-prone. She once fell from a window, and she accidentally overdosed on sleeping pills on another occasion. According to later accounts given by Mary herself, her mother began to use her for sex work when she was just 4 years old, though this remains unconfirmed by family members. They did know, however, that Mary's young life had already been marked by loss. She had seen her 5-year-old friend run over and killed by a bus. Given all that had happened, it did not surprise them that by age 10, Mary had become a strange child, withdrawn and manipulative, always hovering on the edge of violence. For weeks before her first murder, Mary Bell had been acting strangely. On May 11, 1968, Mary had been playing with a 3-year-old boy when he was badly injured in a fall from the top of an air raid shelter. His parents thought it was an accident. The following day, 3 mothers came forward to tell police that Mary had attempted to choke their young daughters. A brief police interview and a lecture resulted, but no charges were filed. On May 25, 1968, Mary Bell, along with her friend Norma Bell, coaxed 4-year-old Martin Brown into an abandoned building located in the suburbs of the city of Newcastle. Once inside, she strangled the child and fled. Brown's lifeless body was later found by 2 boys, followed by Mary and Norma, who had returned to the scene of the crime. Both girls were there when the police arrived, but there was nothing to indicate that Brown had been murdered, so the case was closed. Mary Bell reportedly later showed up at Brown's residence and asked to see the boy. When his mother explained he was dead, Bell asserted that she knew, but that she wanted to see him in his coffin. Shortly after, Mary and her friend Norma broke into a nursery school and vandalized it with notes taking responsibility for Martin Brown's death and promising to kill again. Police assumed the notes were a morbid prank. For the nursery school, this was just the latest and most disturbing in a series of break-ins. They wearily installed an alarm system. At the school, Mary was telling her fellow classmates that she had killed Martin Brown. Her reputation as a show-off and a liar prevented anyone from taking her claims seriously. That is, until another young boy turned up dead. On July 31, 2 months after the first murder, Mary Bell and her accomplice, Norma Bell, lured a 3-year-old boy named Brian Howe to a so-called wasteland located in the Newcastle suburb where all 3 children resided. Afterward, Mary strangled him and used a pair of scissors to, among other things, carve the letter M into his stomach, a clue which would later be useful to investigators. When Brian's sister went looking for him, Mary and Norma offered to help. They searched the neighborhood, and Mary even pointed out the concrete blocks that hid his body. But Norma said he wouldn't be there, and Brian's sister moved on. When Brian's body was finally found, the neighborhood panicked. 2 little boys were now dead. Police interviewed local children, hoping someone had seen something that would lead to a suspect. They were shocked when the coroner's report returned. As Brian's blood had cooled, new marks appeared on his chest and someone had used a razor blade to scratch the letter M onto his torso. And there was another disturbing note: the lack of force in the attack suggested Brian's killer might have been a child. On the day of Brian's burial, Mary was spotted lurking outside his house. She even laughed and rubbed her hands together when she saw his coffin. They called her back for a second interview, and Mary, perhaps sensing investigators were closing in, made up a story about having seen an 8-year-old boy hit Brian on the day he died. The boy, she said, had been carrying a pair of broken scissors. That was Mary Bell's big mistake. The mutilation of the body with scissors had been kept from the press and the public. It was a detail known only to investigators and one other person, Brian's murderer. Both Norma and Mary broke down under further questioning. Norma began cooperating with police and implicated Mary, who herself admitted to being present during Brian Howe's murder but tried to place the blame on Norma. Both girls were charged, and a trial date was set. At the trial, the prosecutor told the court that Bell's reason for committing the murders was solely for the pleasure and excitement of killing. Meanwhile, the British press referred to the child murderer as evil-born. The jury agreed that Mary Bell had committed the murders and handed down a guilty verdict in December. Manslaughter, not murder, was the conviction, as court psychiatrists had convinced the jury that Mary Bell showed classic symptoms of psychopathy and could not be held fully responsible for her actions. While Norma Bell showed emotion during the trial, Mary Bell remained stoic. Mary was also painted as the mastermind behind the murders, while Norma was described as simple-minded. Ultimately, Mary was found guilty of manslaughter instead of murder and was handed an unspecified life sentence in December 1968. Norma, who purportedly displayed signs of remorse, had the charges against her dismissed. After serving 12 years in prison, Mary Bell was given a new identity to provide her with a chance at a new life and protect her from tabloid attention. Even still, she was forced to move several times to escape hounding by tabloids, newspapers, and the general public, which somehow always found ways of tracking her down. Things grew worse for Bell after she had her daughter in 1984. Bell's daughter didn't know about her mother's crimes until she was 14, and a tabloid paper found Bell's common-law husband to track them both down. Soon, a slew of journalists surrounded her house and camped out in front of it. The family had to escape their home with bedsheets over their heads. In 2009, the mother of Martin Brown, June Richardson, spoke with the Daily Mail about Bell's consideration by the British legal system, expressing frustration and anger over the matter. "It's all about her and how she has to be protected," stated Richardson, who added that the family of those murdered by Bell are, by extension, also victims, ones who had not been given the same rights as killers. Indeed, Mary Bell remains protected by the British government today, and court rulings protecting the identities of certain convicts are even unofficially referred to as Mary Bell orders.